Yeah.
Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. We have quite a few things on the agenda today for the January 27th work session. I will turn it over to our city manager, Scott Sanders, to introduce the first item.
All right. Good morning, Mayor, council members, general public. You guys can come on up. As our first group, we have some of our great performers in the housing industry that help us out, and we thought it would be helpful to bring them in this morning as we have our housing strategy work being done by that committee, and they'll be finishing their work up here in the next 3 months or so. So we wanted to make sure council was well informed of the context of what these great groups are doing for us in that same realm. So with that, I think I'll let Lance get us kicked off.
All right. Good morning, Madam Mayor, Council. It's Lance Henning, Greater Des Moines Habitat for Humanity. We're at 95 University here in Des Moines. We have 4 nonprofits here with us today: Habitat for Humanity, Home Inc., NFC, and Rebuilding Together. And that the 4 of us do much of our work focused around home ownership, homeowner-occupied repair, home preservation. We have regularly collaborated and partnered together, and presenting together today really, I think, shows our shared commitment to be part of the solution and working to meet a portion of the housing needs here in Des Moines. Our purpose is really to update you on the significant investment that our organizations are making in the city of Des Moines, celebrate some of our successes, and that our successes have been achieved through creativity and solution-driven approaches, and that to highlight that this group is ready and willing to have the desire and capacity to dramatically expand our impact if that opportunity exists. So again, we're excited to share our updates, and we have the expertise, flexibility, and passion to be able to address some of the housing challenges here in the community. And that when you think about workforce housing, creating homeownership opportunities, and home preservation, that these nonprofits are some of the best bang for the buck. So I think Carrie's going to start us off and talk about Home Inc.
Good morning. Carrie Warderman with Home Inc. We're located at 1618 6th Avenue. Hopefully you all are familiar with the work that we do. We're the oldest nonprofit affordable housing organization in the city. We've updated our mission in the last year to be more encompassing of the work that we do. So our mission now is to empower neighbors by helping them overcome barriers to obtaining and maintaining safe, stable, affordable housing through education, housing counseling, neighborhood revitalization, and affordable housing development. And some of the broad buckets, we are a HUD-certified housing counseling agency. We do serve the entire state, but a large portion of our clients on the counseling side come from Polk County and specifically Des Moines. And we're also a community housing development organization. The majority of the housing development that we have done over the last several years is in the city of Des Moines proper. Since 1992, we've built 186 new homes, all for low to moderate income families, so below 80% of area median income. In the last 5 years, $5.6 million of investment into new affordable housing development. And then the team at Home Inc. Assisted in the distribution of $1.6 million in emergency rental assistance funds through COVID relief. And we each wanted to share just a little story of a family that has benefited from the services that we provide. So this is Lindsay. Lindsay is a really neat and exciting story. So Lindsay was a Section 8 voucher holder, went through the Section 8 homeownership program. She went through our lease purchase program. So some of the homes that we build are turnkey and some are lease purchase, which means that we're working with a family that's not quite mortgage ready, not quite ready to qualify yet, but with some work in doing credit cleanup and savings and budgeting, Lindsay was able, after about 15 months of renting, to purchase her home. She then decided that she wanted to start an in-home daycare to be a service to her neighborhood and her community, focusing on providing childcare in that second and third shift period for her neighbors when it's not largely available. And so we happened to be doing a volunteer day of service and put a call out to our homeowners asking if there were any projects we could do. And Lindsay said, you know what, I have the dollars to purchase materials for a fence, but the labor is really expensive. If you can help me build a fence, I can start a daycare in my home. I can get licensed. And so we were able to build the fence for her so that she can start a daycare so that she can now provide to the community. So Lindsay's a really, really neat success story for us. So I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie.
Thank you. Stephanie Murphy with Neighborhood Finance Corporation. Hopefully you've all been by our office. We've been there a couple years, 4908 Franklin Avenue. I just real highlight of what we're up to and what we're doing. This is our 35th anniversary. So we're really excited about that. And there's some data there. But just a refresher, we're primarily a renovation lender. So every loan we do has your forgivable loan money in it. Thank you very much. And homeowners do an average of $30,000 per project. Along with that, so they up to $10,000, and then they put in their own money. We also have expanded our commercial lending line of business, and so we're doing lending to build affordable housing, both single family and multifamily housing. And we can do that as a CDFI. We're raising capital. We should be closing on another $1.3 million next week to have additional funds available. And then we run programs like the Polk County down payment program, where we deployed $5 million in about 9 months for people below 80% to buy homes. And just a note about that program allowed over like 45% of the people that took advantage of that program were communities of color, which is much higher than what homeownership rates generally are for that group. So that money really did go to those that maybe wouldn't have bought a home otherwise. And then we are currently doing the Polk County Large Renovation Program with partners that are here and in the process of deploying $6 million. And that provides an additional up to $50,000 for people that are taking advantage of ION. They're taking advantage of our program, Habitat, Rebuilding Together, and then they can do that. And then thank you very much for the Energy Advantage money that you gave us. That was ARPA money. We are deploying that, which is in addition to our lending program. And it has put us in the ability, because of our renovation lending, and then we've done energy lending, we're seen as a leader nationally, and we're in a pilot round where we're currently applying for up to $11 million of capital to expand that work, both for single and multifamily in the community. So by having that, it's really spurred us to be able to access capital earlier than other CDFIs. So thank you for that work.
What's the source of that funding?
So it's Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund money, and it's our easiest path that we're going through is Opportunity Finance Network that supports CDFIs. We're a member of them, and they support CDFIs across the country. And so our pot is CCIA, which Clean Communities Investment Act, I think is what it's, or Accelerator is what that stands for. And every CDFI is initially eligible for 11 million. We only make it for 6 million because they really want to give us what we can deploy in the next year. But then we can come back once we start deploying that and get the remainder.
And so is that specifically for energy improvement project?
Yes. So we would pair it with our other programs, though. So people could do a roof and get solar, and then the insulation. We always do an energy audit. Yep. So that's one reason that we're able to get that money early, is because we have the experience doing whole home renovation, and we have the experience of doing the energy audits and tracking energy savings. So those two things we're one of 26 organizations nationally, so we're really excited.
Is it a private grant or through the federal government?
It's through the federal government. And the money is already in the bank, if anybody is wondering about that. So there's no expectation. The contracts have been signed. The money is at JP Morgan Chase. The expectation is that it will be deployed.
It just hasn't been awarded yet.
It has been awarded to the grantee, which is OFN. It just hasn't been awarded to us. We will know in March what we're getting, and we'll have the money in May.
Excellent. Where it's awarded to a grantee, it's out the door. Sub-grantees, you are a sub-grantee.
Exactly.
So these dollars are out there. You're going to take advantage of them.
Perfect. Yeah. So
there are a lot of examples.
Yeah. So we're very excited. You can read this story. You all have the PowerPoint, but this is somebody. Over 90% of the home buyers that we help are below 80% of the area median income, though, as you know, we don't have income guidelines. But what's really become apparent as housing costs have risen, interest rates have risen, is that we need to continue to raise subsidy. We use Energy Advantage, we use down payment programs that we have to get people. This particular borrower took advantage of a lot of the programs that we have, Energy Advantage being one of them. And so we just are really proud of that work of how we've been able to layer multiple levels of financing to get people into homes. So that's that.
You track and have data on energy savings from the Energy Advantage program in terms of what it's saving people over time?
We're working on it. We've just hired someone to help us put it all together. There's a long story to that because the company we were using when we first started the program closed. So we've had to recreate all of our original data because we lost it. So it's been not as smooth, but we're really hopeful that OFN is going to put tools in place also to help us. But we have some early data that it's pretty significant.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like an important piece of the story
It
to
will.
tell because that people don't talk about energy efficiency and energy savings as affordability, but it's a big part of housing affordability, and it's also consistent with a lot of the sustainability efforts that we're trying to move forward as a city as well.
In 6 months, we should have a lot.
Good morning. Kimberly Hansen, Rebuilding Together Greater Des Moines Executive Director. Linda is on our board of directors. We're here celebrating our 30th year in Greater Des Moines. So that's an accomplishment through thick and thin of the economy and the ups and downs. The slides that you see there for Rebuilding Together is we help families stay safe, warm, and dry in their homes. We don't build houses. We renovate and improve the living conditions of low-income families in their home. Our numbers we traditionally break down to get a better feel for the homeowners that we help themselves. And so we've gathered our numbers together there of overall homes helped last year was 111. And of those was 152 residents altogether. 80 of them were female head of household, 14 children under 18, 82 homes that have a family member with a disability, 114 homes that have a family member 60 and above, and 19 homes with a veteran family member. On each of those homes, the average income is $18,500, which if you think about trying to live off of that and, replace your roof, leaky windows, broken window from a branch falling off a tree, who do you call? So on average, most of the repairs we do have over 5 items that we work on, and so we've broke those down to the major core components of keeping your house safe, warm, and dry. The homeowner we decided to highlight is Marty. Marty lives on the south side of Des Moines, and she's been in her home for over 20 years. She is a survivor of domestic abuse and wants to stay in her home. But her husband held all the knowledge to doing home repairs, and so she really was left with not having an understanding of how to take care of her home. Her health has been declining. She has a diagnosis of kidney failure and needs to go to dialysis 3 days a week. And while she's there, it's for 5 hours each day. She'd been using a walker and a scooter to get around her house and down the 3 steps to her side door. But now with her health deteriorating, she needs to have a wheelchair. So the picture you see there is the group of volunteers that we had from Shazam, and so as a corporate volunteer team that built the ramp for Marty. So now she has a safe way to get in and out of her house and get to dialysis when she needs to go. Besides the volunteers and the contractors building the wheelchair ramp, we installed a new roof, gutters, exterior updates, interior painting. The kitchen ceiling had become moldy and crusty from the water from the roof leaking, and we repaired that and the basement improvements. So we made a world of change for her life. It made her self-esteem much greater and made her gave her the ability to stay in her home longer as she lives on the south side. So.
Thank
We
you.
have, you are
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
Yeah,
You are
do you work
welcome.
closely with ION? I assume you do. the
Yes, we
inside
do.
for the-
We're in our second year of working with ION, so great program. We appreciate it. The majority of our source of funding besides ION is Aging Resources of Greater Iowa, Corporate Foundation. We hold fundraisers throughout the year and take donations. So we are out there taking in funds wherever we can. By doing it that way, we don't have as many restrictions that you get with a lot of different like federal programs and things like that. That's the easiest way to say that.
Thank you.
There's flexibility.
Habitat for Humanity, that most folks think of us around our affordable homeownership program. We celebrated our 500th house completed this last year, and that you think about who we typically work with. The average TSA agent makes $49,000 a year. Our average home buyer was a little over $50,000 this past year on there. That is 46% of the area median income on there. And typically, we've been in households size around 4.2 to 4.4 members in the household on our homeownership program. Our mortgage readiness counseling, we are a HUD counseling agency on there. We're helping people become mortgage ready on there and walk alongside them if they want to work through a plan on how they can reach homeownership, and also doing referrals if they need other types of assistance on there. We worked with 230 households that way. Our tool lending library, which we actually, NFC passed that on to us at one point on there. We have 405 members that are low income. It's to help them to maintain and to improve their home. And that there's over 300 tools that they can check out and be a part of that. And then our home preservation, our critical repair program, that is targeted at below 60% of the AMI. We've done more than 27 homeowner-occupied repairs, and that program started in partnership with the city of Des Moines. So it's over on between 13th and 16th Street on Mondamon. There was the city had some money to replace sidewalks. There was a whole bunch of retaining walls falling over on the sidewalks, and that started by bringing volunteers in the neighborhood together to fix the retaining walls, and the city came in and fixed the sidewalks, and that was the start of our repair program. Some of the investments that we made this last year, we completed 26 homeownership opportunities. That was 20 new and 6 acquisition rehabs, a value of $6.1 million. We also are the lender. So we lended to those 26. We also lended to 3 others in addition to that on there. It's a below market interest rate. If you think about the value of that affordability that creates, that was over $1.8 million in affordability. And then what we have coming for this year on here, we've been working on Carter Court on the northeast side, Ward 2. There's 15 homes there, and those houses will start closing in March, and everybody will be moved in by July. Our critical repair program, we did 152 repairs in Des Moines, $3.2 million in value on those repairs. 107 of those households earned less than $30,000 that we worked with on there. And that Carol that's there, she's an example of the families that we work with. She had critters coming into the house. They had chewed through the siding. They were actually into the closet on that. That's why she called. And then once our team was able to be out there, then we worked on fixing the siding, replacing the siding, making sure that their house was secure in that manner on there. Replaced the furnace, which she has a lower utility bill now because of the new furnace. And then accessibility, we redid a bathroom remodel. So there's a walk-in tub and then a ramp on the front of the house. And that she also had an old brick walk getting up there and replaced that walk, so she had a safe way to walk up on. So those are the investments we made this last year, and each of those 107 households on the less than 30,000 all has significant issues that they wouldn't have been able to handle on their own in any way. I think Stephanie's helping us next.
we wanted to share what we individually doing, but then we started to talk about our numbers when we put them all together and the impact that we're having. And so this first slide shows just in 2024, whatever our fiscal year is, the number of homes that we built together. So as organizations, and then the number of owner-occupied repairs that were completed by our programs, and the number of new homeowners through our lending programs, and then the lease purchase at Home Inc. We just thought that was pretty good. We have some dollars too in previous slides, and then we started looking at the last 5 years in the homes built and the owner-occupied repairs and the homeowners created. We wanted to share that with you. We're pretty proud of the work that our teams really are doing. We're just leading the effort.
Next, our chart shows by organization, homes built, owner occupied, the numbers that you just looked at on the previous slide. So it breaks it down by organization as far as homes built, owner occupied repairs, and homeowners created. As Stephanie has said, it's an impressive number when you put it all together. So. Next one is our homeowners numbers, excuse me, by AMI. So the majority of our organizations serve those 80% and below. And going across the other way, you can look and see on the owner-occupied repairs, those tend to be 100% for both Habitat for Humanity and Rebuilding Together. When you get into lending and other sources, then it goes up a little bit or goes down a little bit. But the majority of the homeowners that we help live it with an income that does not allow them to do the repairs themselves.
So we felt like this would be a really impactful graphic to share with you in the value of leveraging the dollars that are coming into our various organizations. So this is a consolidated pie chart of all 4 of our organizations reflecting the breakdown. And Lance will talk a little bit later about exact leveraging on city funds there, but you can see we're all pulling in multiple sources of funding, including reinvesting anything that our organizations are generating as well back into the programming to make sure that the community is receiving the largest possible impact with the smallest possible investment from the city. And one thing that I'll just add to the context here is we did break down just numbers. I know many of us serve outside of the city of Des Moines as well. So these numbers do reflect just what is from the city of Des Moines specifically. And then this is just a breakdown of the city of Des Moines taxpayer dollars versus city of Des Moines federal funds. So for Home Inc., this is all ION funding that came from the city of Des Moines. We received funds to build a ramp for a homeowner that we were building for. And then the federal funds reflected is not encompassing. The federal funds you see there are ESG funds and total operating funds. We also received federal home funds through the city for new home construction. They were lumped together in our data with our IFA home funds. So that was about $1.1 million in total. And then you'll see the same thing with NFC, Rebuilding Together, and Habitat, just leveraging those city dollars up significantly, combining with the federal dollars and other investment dollars to really have the largest possible impact.
I think all 4 organizations appreciate the partnership with the city of Des Moines, the investment it makes to around housing on there. And so what Carrie was sharing on there, the city this past year was about $1.7 million on the investment. Half of that's from city revenue, half of that's from federal on there. And so for every dollar that the city's investing, the nonprofits are able to leverage 9 additional dollars, so a 9-to-1 on that. And that partnership matters. It allows us to be able to invest in the city, and we think that that's a good value and is creating significant impact. So we are thankful for the partnership with the city of Des Moines, and that it matters in the work that the 4 of us do, the 4 organizations do. We appreciate that partnership, and that we are making impact and investment because of your partnership, and that really you have 4 creative, innovative, and passionate organizations around housing, and that we look forward to continuing that partnership down the road. Thank you.
Questions?
Yeah.
So when the community land trust gets rolling, how do you see your group? Maybe you're not all going to be working with them, but how is that going to impact? Or, what are you seeing? I think you've got someone who's ready to. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, Carrie,
And
Heading
I
to that.
certainly will let the others speak to what their thoughts are. But Home Inc. We're in the process of working through finalizing. We've agreed to steward in the land trust. So from a staffing standpoint, we've agreed to help do that work that will be required on this initial year to all of the governing documents and the filings and all of those fun things, and then to help set up policies and procedures and processes so that the land trust can become successful as directed by the board, and then working hopefully with, I know I can speak for Home Inc. to say that homes that we build, we fully intend for those to go into the land trust when they're sold to a home buyer, so that that affordability stays in place in perpetuity. So the home buyer, instead of buying the whole bundle of rights with the land and the land will go into the trust and the house will go to the home buyer, and then that will be able to stay affordable in perpetuity. So I can speak for us.
Do you have a goal, like annually, how many homes, or I don't know if that's a goal or a dream, but like, what's the capacity going to be?
We had our first board meeting of the Community Land Trust on Friday afternoon. And so I think it's too early to commit. There are some really, really lofty goals, some very large numbers that are being thrown around that I hope we can achieve. But, Amos has a dream of 500 homes in the first few years, and that's pretty aspirational. We'll see what happens. But we're excited to be part of it and to partner with the existing nonprofit organizations and other developers to see how quickly and how large we can grow that portfolio to have that impact of affordability and perpetuity, so that those dollars that you're putting in, those city dollars and those federal dollars, are having a lasting impact, and we're not just bleeding out the bottom of the bucket through the hole and filling the top at the same time. But
I'll just say, we hope that some of the NFC properties that can have that, because right now we sell them on the open market and people can have any income, so to have that perpetuity. And then we also plan to be a lender that they can choose from, that people that are buying it, and then they could access our down payment assistance, and especially if they're doing a home that needs renovation or purchasing a new home and they want to finish the basement, they can take advantage of the forgivable loan, build a fence, something like that.
And Habitat for Humanity works with deed restrictions, so that much of what we're doing is very much similar to what the land trust aspect. So it seems like it would make sense to be able to put those in there. I think the key thing from the discussion at the beginning with the steering committee on there is that this needs to be additive, right? That we're not just moving the bucket to do the same amount. It needs to be a tool. It can be and should be a tool for us to be able to do more housing across the community. And so I think that's the big piece, is like, how do we make this additive?
Hey, Lance, I've got another question for you. I know you're doing some building in the suburbs. And what's the difference between a typical home you build in Des Moines versus one in, let's say, Waukee? I mean, how does it look different?
Well, I don't think it does, is the big piece on there, right? So we have, traditionally, most people think of us, and we have, for the most part, done single-family infill.
Mm-hmm.
And then part of our strategy is thinking about multifamily, and that we're looking for the right places. I mean, we're having some conversations around where we can be doing multifamily that makes sense in Des Moines, too, right? So there's clearly a need on the infill, and we're going to continue to do that where it makes sense on that. And then where we have opportunities to think about a townhome or duplex on there, that we'll do that as well.
Okay, but like the difference between having a garage or having a basement, are there different models that you developed for the suburbs?
So Carter Court, that's in Des Moines, that's single family, is they have single car garages on there. What we've proposed in Waukee, or we'll start building late this year on there, is single family or a single garage on slab on there.
Any other questions?
Can I say anything about the meeting we were in?
We're very preliminary, so
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
He has a chance to do a project in Des Moines I'll share more with you about, but he met with the neighborhood association a week or 10 days ago. You know, it's just a preliminary meeting, and top of mind for that neighborhood was we don't want a second-rate project to what they got in Waukee, and Lance has been very confirming that it'll be a first-class project if it's able to come together.
Okay, any other comments or questions? I want to thank everyone for what you do. I know a lot of you are part of the housing initiative that we're going to finalize, I think, the next month. And there's a huge need to keep homes repaired and updated in Des Moines because we have the older stock. And so when you hear the stories making really lives better for the people, is really, truly remarkable. And we want to thank you for all the hard work you do.
Thank you all for your time today.
Okay, thanks.
Give our annual report.
Okay, if you want to just
Just
We'll leave it with-
pass them on down.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. Okay, the next item?
Mayor, I think we're going to switch the order here, Steve, if that's okay, and, yep, and go with the public right-of-way first, making sure we have enough time to get through these.
All right, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Steve Neighbor, Des Moines City Engineer and Des Moines resident. Appreciate the time today to talk about our right-of-ways and the codes we have in place to manage them and make sure that they are safe for all those that use them. And so there's really going to be two components I'm going to talk about because they do kind of overlap with when we receive complaints or questions or comments about the right-of-way, and those are border area maintenance and vision clearance triangles. So there's two components here today. I'm going to give you some background on them and why are they in place. And again, like I said, go into those two codes and then show you some examples that are actually very recent. So, okay. Why am I here today? In August, at the council meeting, the council placed a moratorium on enforcement of Section 102 of the border area maintenance and asked that staff come back and review the code and give a presentation to council. And I'm including the intersection site distance, Section 114.14 as well, because there's a lot of overlap and we've received a lot of questions related to that code as well. So we talk about right-of-way. Typically, it's the street and alley and the space between the roadway edge and the property line. And so sometimes this is, a lot of people maybe don't understand this. I'll show some graphics later, but typically right-of-ways, for example, which the right-of-way is kind of highlighted in purple in this graphic, and right-of-ways can range anywhere from 14 to 20 feet for alleys, 40 and 66 feet for local residential streets. The 66 is kind of interesting because back in the 1600s, there was a survey chain invented, and the survey chain, which was used heavily in the colonial periods all the way into the early 20th century, was 66 feet long. 80 survey chains equals a mile. And so obviously in Iowa, we have a lot of square miles. So you can see where their survey chain came into effect. But that's why you see a lot of 66-foot right-of-ways. It's a survey chain. And then we have major arterials that have 80 feet to 110 feet of roadways. So here's another graphic showing a public right-of-way in Des Moines. I've tried to highlight it there in yellow and just to kind of further emphasize, if you're in an incorporated area, this is pretty common, the property owner does not own that area highlighted in yellow, and a lot of people don't always understand that. When I bought my property in the east side of Des Moines, I did not pay for the area in yellow. You know, when you look at the acreage that I bought, it is within the property boundary lines. So the property owner does not own the area in yellow, but our codes, which is common, when I've worked across the Midwest, require that the property owners maintain that area in yellow, including whether it includes sidewalks or not. That the property owner, they don't own it, but they maintain it. Okay. The two codes I'm here to talk about: border area maintenance. It's the space between the roadway and the property line, excluding the vision clearance triangle. It's the bottom line is, can the public safely utilize the space? Okay, and I'll kind of go into some examples of that, but whether it's walking, access, emergency response, utilities, can they safely use the public space? Okay, and it's section 1022 of the code. The vision clearance triangle essentially is, can I see when I'm approaching an intersection? Okay, and that's section 114.14, and that's just based off of national and state design guidance. Actually, before this presentation, when we get questions on it, I actually pull out a manual I've used for 25 years. I use the same manual in Wisconsin as I did in Illinois. It's a national manual. So here's a graphic showing that. So again, here's the border area, right? So it's essentially the public right-of-way is the border area plus the street width. And so you can see on the left side, the border area does not have a sidewalk, but it's the same, same on the right side of this photo, where the border area does have a sidewalk. So in vision clearance side triangles, it's again, can I see approaching conflicts at an intersection? And they're both for safety purposes. Again, one it really essentially comes down to, can I see at an intersection? And this is the point of this table is really to show you that we actually have a number of departments involved in this. Public Works, for example, does the mitigation efforts and does the clearing and maintenance of the right-of-ways. Traffic and Transportation is involved from a review standpoint. Again, we have technicians that do, for example, the vision clearance calculations. They go out there and they put cones out and measure out the site triangles. And so there's a whole team effort involved, and a number of people on that are involved in here. So why are these codes in place? I mean, number one is safety. We have a duty to exercise ordinary care in the construction, repair, and maintenance of our streets and right-of-ways. Keep them in a reasonably safe condition for all those that use it. And again, the duty is not just in the streets. It extends into that border area as well. So not confined to the pavement, essentially. And there's plenty of case law that supports essentially this statement here. But again, number one reason is safety. Consistency, okay? When we talk about consistency, what is the expectation for those that use the right-of-way? And that includes emergency response, police, fire, medical personnel, and as well as utilities, right? I mean, if we want, fiber companies to come and put fiber so we have different options for internet, we want them to have know where they can put their facilities and what they're going to deal with. So, as well as our own public works crews when maintaining it. And you'll see examples later that show we haven't replaced an intake right now because someone's got a bunch of stuff that looks nice, but it's right behind the intake. So. Aesthetics, this is obviously, now we're creeping into the subjective versus objective argument, but again, what's aesthetically pleasing to others may not be, to someone may not be pleasing to others. But we did actually, in 2018, 2019, we had residents that worked with our staff to kind of they made amendments to the border area code to allow the list of flowers and plantings that you see up on the screen there, in the border area. Okay. So again, this is just kind of a summary of, what is the border area for? It's that space for people to walk, use the right-of-way travel, pedestrians entering and exiting vehicles, utilities, snow storage, and what's allowed in the border area. So here's kind of just a real brief summary of what is allowed in the border area. Turf grass under 12 inches. The plantings under 3 feet, those came into play in 2018, 2019 with an effort led by Mary Farrell and other residents to allow those flowers that the list I showed above. We do allow utility boxes, utility access structures, some mulch is allowed, and then trees we have our forestry division that manages street trees. And then you can see the summary on the right, what's prohibited. So, basically essentially obstructions. Right? Obstructions, weeds, pavers, boulders, of that sort. Here's kind of a summary of what other cities allow. And what you'll see is we are actually less restrictive on what can be planted than Altoona, Ankeny, Cedar Rapids, and Iowa City. We are more restrictive on the height in West Des Moines and Omaha, but less restrictive on the area that can be planted. West Des Moines is you can plant around your mailbox essentially. And then Omaha has restrictions of how far back you need to be from your curb and the sidewalk. So, nope, and this is a summary of what I just said actually. So it is a complaint-based program. Our teams are not out searching for these, okay? And in fact, the people that do this work do have a lot of other duties. They're traffic technicians, so they are the same people doing traffic studies and collecting data for those sort of things. So it is a responsive effort. So when we get a violation or when we get a notice or a complaint, we do have to respond and look into it. So, there is a time period that the property owners have to mitigate. And then there is also an appeal process. If a resident feels that city staff are not right, then they can go through an appeal process. Our staff, I think in the past 5 years, we've had only 2 that were appealed. And both appeals were in favor of the staff and the sake that the staff were correct in this point. Again, out of the hundreds of complaints received, most people just realize, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I didn't own that property and couldn't do that. And they mitigate it and remove the stuff. So
how many cases is it? You said hundreds. Do you have a specific number? Or?
Yep, it is. We have, I think it was, off my notes. It's my notes here. It was 50 to 60 border area complaints per year. So in the past 5 years, 50 to 60 border complaints per year, and then 70 to 80 vision clearance complaints per year. So
only 2 out of those appealed.
2 total in 5 years had issues with. Yep. And then both appeals were, one was boulders, and the administrative judge was like, no, those need to be moved. Yep. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. And again, we need to consider all users of the right of way. I talked about this before, right? Whether it's emergency response, utilities, or people just traveling and getting in and out of their cars. Objective versus subjective, right? I mean, again, I talked about aesthetics. I talked about, how do technicians and our public works teams decide when to take stuff out, right? If we're going to say, well, I want to allow pavers. Well, does the paver have to be flush to the grass? Well, what does flush mean? If I have pavers in my own private yard that were flush, they probably stick up maybe a 1/4 inch, eighth inch now. That's going to be a real, how do we decide whether someone's going to have to allow that or not? And I hate to say it, we do have cases and claims where people have tripped and fallen on something that's like an 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 inch sticking up. So I mean, the subjective objective thing I would ask that we all keep that in mind. How do we decide what is allowed and what isn't? And so when I say it needs to be easily measurable for the staff that are supposed to do the enforcement. So, and define an expectation for the people, the property owners that are supposed to maintain it. So these cases, or these examples I'm going to show you, are actually since August. So we didn't have to go back far to look at these. Again, I mentioned before, we get 50 to 60 border area complaints a year. And so you can see here, the complaint here was how do pedestrians walk down the street? So you can see there's kids in the lower right picture walking in the street because the vegetation overgrown there. Right, and this one, the complaint was, well, you can't see people, it's obstructing the sidewalk, and the complaint was that it was unsightly. Well, again, that's a subjective statement there. I mean, I like the yellow flowers, but that was what the complaint was. But again, this was a recent complaint about plantings in the right of way.
Because of the height? Right, that's
Not legal. Yeah.
those plants are not,
Right.
okay.
Yep. So yeah, these would
Clarify that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I'm more pointing out the height is an issue. It exceeds the 3 feet.
Yeah.
And it's obstructing the sidewalk is
Yeah.
the list that Mary Farrell and residents came up with plantings that are allowed. The hope is that those types of plantings wouldn't hang over the street and the sidewalk, and that was where that list came from. How they came up with that list. This one was, this is just around a fire hydrant, right? So this was a complaint, and obviously this is makes it an issue for our emergency responders here. So,
Well, is it the fence? No. There you go.
was it?
In that case, did they just need to trim back the plantings, or what did they do to mitigate that?
Well, in this case, all that stuff is over height as well. So, but this one hasn't been mitigated, right? Because it's a moratorium. I mean, it's a moratorium. Yeah, we've been instructed not to enforce this until we had this. So, but
What about the fence? Is the fence legal there, or does that have to come out too?
that depends on where the right-of-way line is. I guess in this picture, it's hard to judge where that is. There are instances where the right-of-way is only a handful of feet off of the curbs, but yeah, if it's in the right-of-way, it needs to be moved back. And we have had instances where we've had to have folks move fences. Yeah.
So is that a permit to put that fence in? Did you guys look into that? Did we grant them a permit?
If it's on private property, we would have nothing to do with it. But if it's on public property, we would not have permitted it. They would not have a permit. So we would not issue a permit to put a fence in the public right of way. So yeah, if it's in the public right of way, we would have to have them remove it. In this case, I can't remember whether off the top of my head if it's in the right of way or not. I don't know if you remember, Jen, or not. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
You do need a permit to put a fence up, though, right? Or no?
I think in your private property.
Private property, you don't need a permit to put a fence up?
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Okay.
But
Well, that was my original question.
yeah,
Was a permit granted for this particular property?
I'm not sure on that fence. No, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That would be looked at. The complaint was really focused on the vegetations in the boulder, but
Okay.
not on the fence. But yeah. Oops, wrong way. Oh, here we go. Oh yeah, well here's more complaints. Again, you can see the vegetation's growing over the blocking signage as well. So, yeah. Unfortunately, with and actually the one on the upper right was the one that was appealed, and the person was unsuccessful with their appeal. They had boulders. Unfortunately, with these rocks, we've had issues where these are just reports of pedestrians were picking up the rocks from the landscaping and throwing them through the windows of parked cars on the streets. Had a claim with someone twisting their ankle from a parked car going to the sidewalk. And so again, this is where you see the rocks are. Again, it may look nice to somebody, but you can see where there are challenges with them. So. And I think the one on the lower right is supposed to be like a planter type area, kind of like the one in the lower left, right? But again, it's in a kind of a subjective argument. Sorry, which one looks nicer, right? Right. But
It's not legal.
not with the pavers, nope. And so right now, our public works team was supposed to replace that intake, but of course we have a moratorium, so we can't tell those people to get their stuff out of the right of way. So now we say again, the one in the lower left, the one in the lower right. Are they both landscaping? Aren't they both landscaping planners? I mean, yeah. Yeah. So again, that's I kind of get back to what do we, the subjectiveness of someone's going to argue, well, you allowed this one in the lower left, but so yeah, these are not allowed. These pictures are examples of not allowed. So. Yeah, our signs, and we actually have residents who help us with this. We have some residents that keep lists of these and send us lists of these, and it's true. These are not allowed, and so it's kind of like you allow one, you have to allow them all. So, but our code is they're not allowed. So you cannot have these signs in the border area. So. Yeah. So the signs could be behind the sidewalk. So behind the sidewalk and on private property. Intersection sight distance. So those were border example. Intersection sight distance, again, it's back to that. Can I see when I'm approaching an intersection? And again, I bring them both up because there's that overlap, right? The intersection sight distance in Des Moines and in other cities trumps the border area, okay? And so the 36 inches that's allowed in the border area does not necessarily apply. It doesn't apply in the vision clearance triangle. So again, this is back to trying to keep that area free so people can see. This is not something staff just made up. These are national standards, state standards that are used as the science to say, here's how we calculate the vision clearance triangle. This is kind of an example of what that looks like, and I'm going to show you in a second that the science that we use is actually less restrictive than what other communities use, and including other communities I used to work for, where they just kind of have an arbitrary triangle. I'll show you that in a second, but this is kind of the calculation. It's essentially, if a car is pulling up to the intersection, can I see each direction to allow time for the other car to also see me and react in case I pull out or they pull. So it's kind of a both. So they can both see each other. It's a reaction time thing. That's what it is. And it's actually a science of the height, the driver's eye height at 3.5 feet. Seeing an object that is roughly, some people use 6 inches high, some people use 2 feet high. Seeing an object that's 2 feet high, so in other words, think about a kid riding a bike, or a kid, person walking a dog or something. Can you see that object over a certain distance to allow reaction time? And again, I mentioned this board comparing this. Here's the table from some of those agencies that other entities that I've compared to. Let me just go to this graphic here. Right. So this was common in previous areas where I worked. They just kind of created a triangle and said it's the vision clearance triangle is 30 feet back from the right of way on each side. So the Des Moines triangle is in dark blue. The yellow, green, brown, and teal is the other communities. You can see where that's more restrictive, right? I mean, that's cutting across. The vision clearance triangle can include private property. And so you can see where the other entities, their vision clearance triangle covers a lot more of the private property than ours does in most cases. And what we also do, let me go back a slide, is our vision clearance triangle is based on the AASHTO statement that the vision is 15 feet back from the travelway edge. Well, some people might argue, why would the vision clearance triangle not start at the stop sign? But if we went to the stop sign, and even in the example that's up there, the triangle would be more impactful to the property owner. So my point is, we are being, somewhat lenient if you wanted to compare us to other entities. And we're not as much in people's private property. And again, like I said, we are measuring it from 15 feet off the travelway. Sometimes our stop signs are a little bit further back. So again, this is the drawn out comparison. And actually, we used to have the larger triangles. And so I think it was maybe 7 years ago or 6 years, was it, we switched to this 2019, we did switch to the blue triangle. So we have switched to, we were more like the green and the green triangle. So, and again, the challenge with that was that really cut right into people's private property. And we figured, well, we're an urban city. We have some science that says, well, maybe this is a way to do this rather than just saying 30 feet back from the right of way each direction. Let's use stopping sight distance as our criteria. So
If we switched it in 2019 and we used to be the real steep line, the green line
Yep.
right there, have we went back and it was some of these things in place before 2019 or, I mean,
well, so the
some of the existing cases that we're dealing with now, was there stuff in there 2019 or before, or how's that?
if we would have, yeah, there's no grandfathering, but if we would have kept the triangle, we'd have more cases, quite frankly, and more people at the corners that are ticked off because we'd be taking out more of their stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that point needs to be made.
Yeah.
That we have made it a little bit more lenient.
Oh yeah. Yep. Absolutely. We have made it more lenient essentially. But again, it's backed by science, right? We have manuals that say, that we are still providing a safe situation if we enforce this blue triangle. And this is just an example of, you can see there are technicians, they'll put paint markings and cones, and so they can show the people like, hey, here's what I'm measuring. And actually, this example looks like the stop sign's maybe 6 inches further back, but so we're not, so it's pretty close to the stop sign in that scenario. But again, these are complaint based. We're not driving around looking for these. It's literally responding to complaints that folks say, hey, I'm having trouble seeing around this intersection. And so
I know that we've seen cases where a sidewalk is a little uneven, and if it's reported to the city has to give notice to the owner, and it has to be repaired, and that relieves us of the liability.
well,
At least we've gone on notice that we're aware of it and we've notified the homeowner.
we need to follow up on the whole, what if they don't do anything, and there's a time frame.
And we do.
Yeah.
But my question is what if somebody has tall plants and it's on a corner, and then there's a wreck, and somebody says, well, I couldn't see because of these plants that are in the right of way. Wouldn't the city be liable?
This is no legal advice, but I mean, certainly if we start allowing stuff, the more stuff we allow, the higher risk we have.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
That was
Yeah.
my point.
Now there may be stuff we don't know about.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
We have a large city, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, but sorry. Let's go.
No worries, thank you. So just so the council is reminded of the Split Gerber case that came down in 2024, which changes the obligation of the city regarding maintenance of sidewalks. So this is an increased concern for the city, because while the maintenance still must continue, any types of slip and fall cases that may be on the abutting, near the abutting property, but on right-of-way, is going to be the responsibility of the city, of the municipality, rather than the abutting property owner. So that is a substantial change, and we're trying to keep track of what's happening there. So, and we do get, I'd say, we do have some cases that we're currently defending or have defended, in which The stop sign was blocked by a private tree branch or things like that. So it does happen.
So if they don't fix the sidewalk, we're liable. So are we fixing them then? So we're not liable, or how's that?
We're going to, we're continuing to enforce, definitely.
Yeah.
But because it's based on complaints and it's difficult because we have
Sure.
thousands of miles of sidewalks, not to mention roadways, it's a challenge. And, thus far, we haven't had another large.
How long do you get to
lawsuit.
replace your sidewalk if you get cited?
Well, it depends. We, at least within the legal department, what happens is we we file the complaints, the municipal infractions, and then a lot of times we're up against the weather and not in the construction. So we do enter into agreements requiring a drop dead date when construction season starts again.
I wonder if they're on a fixed income and can't fix it themselves. Is that our ION program that's going to come in and help with that, or do we do it and then we
Subsidy. There's a separate, it's not ION, but it's
We actually have a subsidy program that based on income people can submit, and we work through that with them. And so we make the homeowners aware of the subsidy program.
You do?
Once they're noticed, yes. Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important that we do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. And in this case, we do have situations like these vision clearance triangles where if we know about something, we may have Public Works mitigate immediately if it's such a site concern here. So again, I talked about two codes, and I know it's tough because they overlap a lot, but again, the bottom line was kind of give you background on why they're there, where they came from, and what's their reasoning, and so we've got our recommendation is to go back and resume enforcing these codes, and so talking with our city manager, the thought was February 28th we go back to what we've been doing, and but I guess I'm here to ask: is there other action items or other questions or things the council would like us to look at?
Steve, go ahead, Carl.
Well, since the moratorium commenced, August or September, is there anything about this that you're suggesting tweaking any of either the line of sight or the triangle or anything? You're not suggesting any changes?
Correct. Yeah, we since we worked through this in 2018, 2019, and even there was, when I see some compromises between staff and what was actually approved, and so we do not have any. We don't recommend any changes. Again, in my opinion, the more stuff we allow, the more challenges there can be. We're opening ourselves up to, and from managing the right of way. So we do not have any recommended changes. And that's why I'm here today to ask if there's other things that.
Yeah, I had a couple of things. First, Steve, thanks. You took a lot of time with me. We've had a couple issues in my ward. He talked about his book that he goes back to. He showed us the book. It has his notes in there from college. Obviously, he had somebody help him study and show him what was
Obviously, it has not been
highlighted, the
updated.
important sections. Because one question I have is, and I know there's a lot of reasons for this: the sight distance, safety, preventing wrecks. What is our just a justification to use in public? Why are we planting trees in the right of way that create a hazard in some circumstances that the city itself is doing? What's the difference between a more mature tree and a rock in the right of way?
So very good question. And honestly, actually, in that table, many cities don't allow trees in the border area. In our case, our city is making an effort to really restore the canopy, and so this quite frankly, this is kind of a compromise. It's kind of a balance. So your question is very valid. It's many cities don't allow street trees in the right of way. So
It's a benefit cost. There's a benefit of the trees, whereas the benefit of these others
A rock
is
doesn't.
probably an amenity, or it maybe looks better as opposed to providing.
Maybe
the
it's a
shade.
bioswell that
Eh.
our reimbursement paid for that now we're going to take out.
And also, there's also one that, our public works, our forestry department, they take care of the trees. So we have a division that is dedicated and focused to take care of the trees. We do not have landscaping crews in our city to manage rocks and pavers and plant other types of plantings. So.
I think that is I think that's like an answer that we should articulate better. The second thing is I've used my own property and others to kind of look at sight lines and where you can see where your line is for where you own it. And I noticed, like on the assessor site, the first page doesn't really show you, but the only place you can click to is like a pictometry. Click on the assessor site, which is I think where a lot of citizens go, and it shows you that. So like it shows that I don't own the area that is the sidewalk in front of the sidewalk. But like on our own page where we have the find your home or show me my home and all the data, is there any way we could get a map like that that shows people where their property line really exists? Because my guess is a high percentage of people think that they own the land all the way to the street. And whatever we can do for public education on that would be helpful. And like even when we direct people to find the details of their own property, you know what I'm talking about, where you can click on it? I think it would just be helpful for everywhere and everyone that's a resident to know. The last thing is a tweak that I would like. I'd like more information on. There are a number of properties, a huge number of properties in our city that have no sidewalk, and homeowners would like a private sidewalk to their front door. So maybe the driveway is off an alley, maybe it's around the corner, maybe there is no driveway. One of the cases that I've watched where we want to require somebody to take out a sidewalk that goes to their front door where there is no sidewalk on the street. Like so, we're crossing the right of way with poured concrete. And it seems to me that if we were okay with poured concrete parallel to the street in that very spot, what's the hazard of it being perpendicular to the street as you go up to the house? And now I know that maybe we have to restrict steps in that area or other things, but I don't know why the number of houses that we have where there is no access to a front door, why we would eliminate access if there's no other way to get there from the street. Or
I think the one challenge with that, and your argument, the question on how is it safer or not safer, right? So the sidewalks along the right of way are required. Everything in the right of way would be required to meet the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so in other words, when we put sidewalks in along there, they can only be no more than 2.08%. They just tweaked it. It's a 1/4 inch per foot. It used to be 2%. They also have longitudinal requirements as well. And then, like I said, when we approach streets for visually impaired, we have to put detectable warning panels, and you see them all over town where they have the domes and they're often red. They actually don't have to be red. It's just a color contrast. So one challenge with allowing those service walks is now we're allowing it as a city. So what if they don't meet those requirements? And so managing that, and also from a utility standpoint, now we as a city are paying to put those back, right? So when we put a sewer through there, and then it's also back to what is allowed. A lot of people want to put brick pavers and stuff out to the sidewalk, or out to the curb, and so. But it is something we do here. We have a number of people all across the city that have asked that they want that. But again, it kind of comes back to what can we manage in the right of way, and then what happens if that's not compliant. So, oh, yeah. Yep. So that's one other challenge too, is does that mean that there's actually a pedestrian crossing, right? If you start getting these all up and down the street, is that a pedestrian crossing? Well, then it's not, it doesn't have a ramp, but it's, so it's not ADA accessible. So it's not a pedestrian crossing in theory. So
The last thing, and I know you're not going to have this information now, but you helped us with understanding what other metro area regulations are, but we didn't really talk about what their enforcement is. And have they grandfathered in anybody? Do they do the same enforcement process that we do? I know in my ward, enforcement of this, like on one street, will require tens of thousands of dollars by 10 to 20 homeowners. And it's just not a situation that I'm really comfortable creating that kind of cost for homeowners on projects that have been there for a decade, longer, many decades, and never had a problem with. It's a street that has no sidewalks on either side of the street, and it's mainly decorative, rocks, sidewalks, retaining walls that are in the right of way that people have built, and it just worries me about the speed and the enforcement. And are there anything that we can learn or compare to from other communities as to how they go about doing that? It's the one piece of comparative information we didn't get today, and I'd kind of love to see that.
yeah, I don't think
I don't think there was anything on enforcement, just comparing the standards.
we did not put that in there. We can look into that. I think, all I had in there was a statement of less restrictive on permitting and compliance timeframes than Minneapolis. So we can look into kind of adding to the table of what is the compliance timeframes as well.
If I may, I'd like to make one comment advocating for trees. West Des Moines is actually looking at revising their requirements and to put trees in right-of-ways. It's been proven that when you have mature trees and canopies, it slows traffic. The city is very good, in my opinion, about when planting trees in right-of-way. They hold them back from intersections, private driveways, to help with clearances. And in a few years, a new tree is de-limbed and it's up high enough. And I've also observed, because we have power poles in our right-of-ways, that Mid-American, when they are replacing poles, they are now pulling them away from private driveways wherever possible. Again, just to help with vision.
Anything else? If not,
Just a quick question about the, when Trees Forever plants trees, is someone making sure they're not close to the intersections? I assume that's happening. That's happening. That means, yeah.
Yeah. That's not to say it never happens, but we are working together to.
okay.
Okay.
So just going forward, going back to Chris's point, I'm not sure how I'm comfortable having people spend tens of thousands of dollars of stuff that's been there over 10 years. So I guess if you're asking, I don't know how I even feel about something like that. I mean, this is homeowners that have did this, and it's been there for, some of them have been there 10 years or more, and now we're going to ask them to spend tens of thousands of dollars to rip it out with no sidewalk on each side. So I guess I don't know what you're looking for from us, but there's no way of grandfathering some of these in. There's no way of looking at that and getting the information to current residents, like, hey, you can't do this anymore, but this has been done, and we've grandfathered some of these in. Or are we just looking at getting these homeowners to spend that money and rip it all out.
I
think-
The problem is
think-
they never were grandfathered.
Yeah.
They
no,
never,
but I'm asking
they
you.
never were allowed, and I think the challenge is how would we determine when it was put in, other than Google Street View? I mean, there's going to be, so we can go back and Google Street View, and one of the cases that brought this to light, quite frankly, that has not been there for 10 years. I mean, we could look on Google Street View and see that was put in there in the past few years. So it's kind of like, well, where is the grandfather start, and how do we determine when it was put in, other than just the private property owner's word? Right.
Right.
Yeah.
They had a complaint.
Yeah.
So the property owners that haven't had complaints on that street, we're only going to hold the property owner that had the complaint
That's right,
and have them take all their stuff out, but the rest of the stuff on the street gets to stay? Or now that there's one complaint for one property and your team has gone out and noticed the whole street has complaints, so now we're going to cite everybody? Or is it just the person that had the complaint?
It's just the person that had the complaint. That is the one where we've done the measurements to actually show and demonstrate, hey, there's a couple issues. One, they put a bunch of stuff in the vision clearance triangle
Yeah.
and in the border area. So we did not go and measure the other property owners that are down the street. So now if someone complained, we would have to go out there and measure and do enforcement. So it's,
I think we all understand the economics doesn't look great, but here's the reality. It only takes one lawsuit to cost six figures, and we've had experience with that. And so this is a safety issue. I think we could use the guidance on the request from Councilman Coleman that if sidewalks are allowed, I see the benefit in that, but they would need to cover ADA. It would need to have the ramp, for instance, right? And then we got to worry about the pedestrians thinking that is a crosswalk. So I think we'd have to look into that further to see if, what would have to come with that allowance. But we can absolutely do that research and see how we could handle that, because at least in those instances, you've got a benefit of somebody being able to have access
Sure.
to their door or whatever they're through
but
the yard.
then is there a permitting process? I mean, we had one come forward that wanted to put in a service walk. And so we went out there and looked, and sure enough, if she put that walk in, it would block the drainage. And so again, who manages the program to allow the service walks in there? But I do really appreciate the comments, and Councilmember Coleman's comment spot on. How many people know about this, right? I mean, if you're a homeowner, in theory, you should get a plat of your property when you close, right? I mean, your attorney, when I close my, you should get a plat. Now, let's keep in mind, not everyone is the owner. Some people could be tenants, and how would they know that the border area is not part of that, in theory, part of that property? So.
And I think when you get that, it just says the distance. I mean, unless you go out with a tape measure, you're going to go out and measure like, oh yeah, I got 350 feet this way. I mean, that for the layperson that doesn't know any of this and just trying to make their property look better.
I guess the word is out now.
Well, actually,
and maybe it's
and make the public space look better, because this is not their property.
Yeah, no, I understand, but they don't. I think some of these folks don't realize that, and
maybe there's a communication.
You talk about lawsuits. Well, we know the whole street, and just because the whole street hasn't had complaints, now you're going to leave the rest of the property owners alone, but you're going to have this guy tear out all of his stuff.
Well, I think it really depends on what is in the yards, and not all of them are the same thing. Height is what created the biggest issue, the sight line. So,
but the particular property owner cut his I thought plantings down to meet the height requirement. Now it's like concrete things were put in place and steps and walkways and.
Okay, but the first thing, how do we break it up? Because right now we have a moratorium. Is it on height, or so we'll refer it back?
Well, it needs to be on what language we had before, and then we can look and research on the service sidewalk.
I'll just go on record saying I'm not comfortable charging these folks having them pay out of their pocket tens of thousands of dollars to start ripping stuff up that's been there for quite a long time. I don't know what we can do. I don't know how we can make it different, but that's,
I think the,
I just,
What was that?
I have heartache. I have heartache with that. I mean,
I
these,
think that we have to look at, I think the biggest thing was the height, right, for safety.
Well, I showed a whole bunch of examples
Right.
here.
Yeah, I can.
So,
Right.
I mean, we, sure.
In the right of way?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say too high above the turf?
I thought it was at 36 inches.
No, I'm talking
Vision.
like paver, edgers and things of that nature, right? That's where it gets really difficult.
I mean, look at this picture right here. How do you tell which pavers are allowed and which one aren't? And there's,
And my concern is that with the recent court case, the law is moving against us and adding liability. And so even, people parking legally along the curb and getting out of a vehicle to get to the sidewalk, none of these are going to be in a safe.
I don't understand why someone would put, I guess, those rock. I mean,
Probably
with
so
someone
they-
driving up in their yard all
Probably.
the time.
the rock snowman.
You put those big boulders in the right of way.
He-
I mean, was you having a problem with someone cutting through as they
Didn't want 'em
turn,
mowed.
or
The case, quite honestly, he wanted
gotta
them
mow
and he
between
wanted
there.
space in his yard to play volleyball is what the initial thing was.
I'm
So
sorry.
quite honestly, what the story was, he wanted the boulders, but he didn't want them in his yard because he wanted space to play volleyball. So he put them in the right of way, and liked them. And that one was an appeal, but that person lost. So
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
But-
but you
I
can
kind of
see-
understand.
Yeah, but you- I get some of it.
I know I can't make it up. I wish I could.
That's a safety issue if you could park there, you couldn't get out of your car. I mean, that makes sense, where when you don't have a sidewalk anywhere and it's not a height issue, it's not a,
Right. And you're going to put tens of thousands of dollars on a property owner that,
and if you would have to rip up some of those
Well,
yards that have no sidewalk, no height issue, the owner, if you had to rip it up for sewer or whatever, the owner would then have to, if they wanted it back, they'd have to pay to put it back.
Well,
The way they have it.
in theory, but I mean, the full transparency, I've received calls and complaints, people very angry because Google or Metronet or whatever fiber company went through someone's landscaping that was, if you want to call it illegally in the public right of way, and the person's all angry, and to make it go away, quite frankly, we just work with Google and put it back. So I mean, it doesn't work. I know in theory.
Right. Well, bottom
but-
line, if, but Google or Metronet going through all those people, could they not say that you're going to be, we have to get through, it's a private way? I mean, can't you give
Could.
notice?
yeah,
Could.
They
you
could give
could, and
notice.
they didn't, because I've had a couple of those
Yeah.
instances in my ward, but they didn't knock on the door or, just say, hey, your landscaping is in the right of way. We won't be able to repair it back to normal, but we do need to get in here and put this in here. That was never communicated to them. They just went in and ripped it up and nobody said anything. Well, of course, folks don't know that
Sure.
that is
Right.
a public right of way.
I think that's where an educational
They-
campaign
they
would be.
just don't.
Yeah.
And so, they're, like the intake right there. You know what? If those bricks come out then you have to take out the intake, then the bricks come out, and I guess if they wanted to put those bricks back in, then they would do it on their own dime. We're not putting those back in, but you let them know that. That, first of all, that's illegal. We're going to take it out, and you're probably going to lose the bricks around your mailbox. I mean, a little communication would probably go a long way.
And it has.
Other than the big hammer.
Understand that it has, because again, the number of complaints we've had, only 2 appeals.
I get,
The system
exactly.
works.
So most people would be like, okay, take the intake out. If I want to put this back in there, I'll put it back in there. If not, but to come in with the heavy hand and start telling folks that we're ripping all this out, and or you're ripping all of it out, we're not. I don't know. That's just that's if you wanted some input from me as just a simple ward council member. I don't want to deal with my constituents having to spend tens of thousands of dollars if it's not, a safety, issue of some sort. I'm not for that, Scott and Steve. I'm not going to
I think it goes back to, it needs to be an educational issue, that if anybody's going to do anything in that area, before they do, they need to check and continually. And I know it's complaint driven, but again, I think a lot of people do not know that part of it. And so from a consensus standpoint,
Change or leave it? That's what we need to know. You want the change, right? Or at least look into the change and bring it back.
modify.
Okay. That's fine.
Modify
You want us to look into changes, gentlemen, or leave it, or look into change?
I mean, depending on the circumstance, yeah.
Oh, we've heard. You want to see the changes?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I was also, last time we dealt with the
Okay. Mr. Voss?
trade those things.
Change or defining it. So do you want council members to email you with thoughts?
No, I think we've got enough
back
to at
to
least
modify.
dive into it a little deeper and look at policies, other examples. But I need to hear from Councilman Voss as well, what your thoughts are.
With all the other issues we have. I guess I'll have to,
That's fine.
I hadn't,
That's
Okay.
absolutely
So,
fine. You have all this
obviously,
information.
there's many varied views. I would say it looks like it's more for the modify in some way. It's kind of like common sense.
I like that. Common sense is.
No, I mean, I know
But
there's
law
rules.
doesn't follow common
I know.
sense either at times. So
But
we
I
gotta-
think there's some, I think, knowing some of the areas that are involved, first of all, we need to let people know that you can't do this in certain areas, start with that, and that most of the people that have had this done have done it not. And because there's no permitting, there's no whatever, they're doing it because they want their yard to look better
And the city property.
in the city property. So I think that there is some, I think height for me is the biggest obstacle.
Yeah, the vision,
from the
the
visual.
vision portion of it, I would agree.
And the safety, well,
vision portion
some of-
it. If somebody
something like
gets out of
this.
their car, yeah, you're gonna bust your ankle.
Especially
on
if there's a
big
sidewalk
boulders.
there. If there's no sidewalk there, there's no, so I think there's,
But again, what's the difference between the boulders and the one in the upper left versus pavers? You could bust your ankle on pavers too. We have cases for it. So,
Comparable to movement of the earth.
Right.
It's going to move.
it's
right,
going to shift.
which,
All right, I think we've got what we need to try
Okay.
and take the net. We'll,
And since now it is
yeah, I think we'll need to postpone the
Vision Zero,
Vision Zero. Once again, my apologies.
unless anybody wants to stay. Anybody have time? I don't know how long the presentation
It's a
is.
good 20 minutes, probably.
yeah,
Thank you for coming
Thanks.
to be prepared to do Vision Zero. and thank for all the other presenters. I guess we will reconvene. There is a closed session at 4 o'clock. There at 4:45, we'll reconvene with our acknowledgement of Grandview and special proclamations, and 5 o'clock is our regular meeting. So thank you for who all attended today. Closed session.